All right. I have a reply for the person who came into the comments and said that the Bill of Rights or any of the rights outlined in the Constitution are not for non citizens. That's a bunch of nonsense. It clearly says a person. That's part of the reason why I emphasize that word when I read it. But also, there just seems to be this general delusion on the right that there's some sort of structure of immigration, them versus us, that's built into the Constitution. And every single thing I've read up until this point, which I'm going to get back to it, but every single thing I have read up until this point predates this little excerpt I'm about to read here, which is from my own family's history. It is a book called From Fennoy to Forever. It is the history of an individual named John Spandy, who arrived here in the, I believe it was 1865. Or no, 1885 or 84 probably. So at any rate, well over 100 years ago. And there was no immigration restrictions at that time. None. And the proof is how these folks came to the country. And I'm just gonna read this like page and a half here. In sooty, dusty, ugly Liverpool, Johann and Bore stood in line to buy their tickets to America, all the way to the Midwest. The weary emigrants in front of them and behind them were buying tickets to New York, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and North Dakota. Minnesota, grumbled the ticket agent to the family in front of Johann. Where in Minnesota? The immigrant family huddled together, talking in a tongue foreign to Johann's ears. The woman wore a fringed shawl tied about her shoulders, and she carried a little tin trunk in arms, cradling it as though it were a baby. The man, tall and stooped, appeared old. Two half-grown boys and a girl stood holding oilcloth bundles, while a little girl with wide, frightened eyes and a runny nose clung to her mother's skirts. Finally, the stooped man turned back to the ticket agent and named a town that Johann had never heard of. With his eyes still on the paperwork, the agent tore off the tickets and said 4 adults and 2 children one way. No, 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 the man argued and gestured. Johann understood that he was trying to say that the boys were still children, but the ticket agent was adamant, and finally, the family pushed the required money through the window. Johann approached the counter before the surly man had time to say next. St. Paul, 1-2A, and before he told Johann how much it would be in English pounds, Johann calculated quickly and turned to Bore. It's 420 kroner for 2 of us. All the way to Minnesota? Ja. But buying their tickets did not mean that they could leave England. Each day they checked back to see if there was room on the next Atlantic liner, and each day they were told, come back tomorrow. At last, after 8 days in the teeming, grimy port, they boarded the steamer. On board, they spent most of their time in a large dormitory packed with 300 bunks and as many people, men and women in the same overcrowded, dark, and narrow room. Berths loomed in tiers, and only a narrow passageway between them. For the first time, Johann was grateful for his short stature. Bore was tall, and the inside of the ship was not. Twice in those first minutes, Bore cracked his head on the ceiling. Johann attempted a feeble joke. You'll be hammered down to my size by the time we reach the other shore. But even though those around guffawed, Bore just rolled his eyes. The steward, a young man not much older than Johann and Bore, came down the steep stair after stair into the gut of the ship, collecting money from each passenger. 3 shillings from each of you. That's for your mattress, mates. The cousins had to buy ocean soap and a straw bed along with everyone else, but they saved some few pence by bringing their own eating ware. An old man sat on his trunk, day and night, or it seemed to Johann, earnestly reading his Bible. But most young immigrants ignored him, even dancing in the crowded area when some musician began fiddling or squeezing an accordion. Sometimes Johann saw the emigrant who had been lying in Liverpool. Now, instead of cradling the tin trunk, the mother held her small daughter on her lap. The child was feverish, and with no medical help and with the deplorable hygiene conditions on board, there was little she could do except comfort her. At New York, the two tired cousins pushed and shoved their way through the immigration depot called Castle Garden, a circular red sandstone fortress built before 1812 to help defend the city from a possible naval attack. Originally known as the West Battery, it rose out of the harbor about 300 feet offshore, connected to the mainland by a wooden causeway and drawbridge. It then became transformed into a place of entertainment where Jenny Lind sang as a young woman. But between 1855 and 1889, Castle Garden served as immigrant landing depot, through which 8 million immigrants entered the country. Ellis Island would not become the processing center for another 5 years. And that's it. Now they are Americans. There was no issue with people simply coming to the country, going through a depot, and I assume signing their names in some book and maybe registering with I don't know who. And then they were us. The issue came with increasing xenophobia and political division brought on by people trying to divide us and gain power over us. There is absolutely no reason not to go back to this. Not a single one. There aren't enough people coming here to make a difference. And even if they were, they would be working citizens and they would contribute just like immigrants did all along. The only reason to get all in a hissy fit about it is racism.